Everybody. Today's mini lecture is about how to use rubrics to improve your writing. And you can do that both as a pre-writing technique and also you'll receive my feedback on a rubric, and so of course you can use it then as well. But I recommend it highly as a pre-writing technique because when you look at the rubric, you know what your instructor's expectations are, and what things in particular the instructor is looking at when grading your papers. So let's take a look right now at a rubric, and then I'll break it down and talk about the different sections. So here you have the rubric for the personal narrative. You'll see at the end of the assignment, that's where you'll find it. And you can see here that I've listed both the characteristics to receive high score and also the characteristics of a low score. And so now I'm going to go ahead and break that down, break each of those categories down for you. So although on the personal narrative rubric the message shows up last, actually the message, or in essays we're going to do in the future, the thesis statement, this is really one of the most important things. Without a message or a thesis, the rest of what you're writing kind of loses its point. So you want to ask yourself, as you're trying to figure out what your message is or what your thesis is later, what point are you making? What do you want readers to learn or think about from reading your story in this case? For the personal narrative essay, you should make it clear to readers that this story is either a Bildungsroman or empowerment through creative expression. That's what the assignment prompt asks you to address. Either one of those issues, or both if you'd like, because sometimes it might be both. All right, and let's move on to the next section. The next section is your arrangement or organization. For a personal narrative, or any kind of narrative, it's usually being told in chronological order. Now, sometimes when you go to see the movies in particular, they'll start from somewhere in the middle of the story and then do a flashback to bring you back up to where it is, to where you are in the time when the movie starts. That's kind of a way to hook you in, let you know ahead of time, here's where the action is going to happen, and then they go back and they give you the background. You could also do that, but usually personal narrative is going to be told in chronological order. The other thing is you want to have characters and events that help the reader understand the point being made. Usually you're having some sort of conflict with something. Now, by conflict, we don't mean an argument, but just some sort of a difficulty, a challenge, right? That's our conflict. So by having characters that are contributing to the story, or by describing the events, the reader will understand what point you're trying to make. You want to end on a note, this is the conclusion, you want to end on the note that makes the reader think further about the lesson or the message that you're imparting. And we'll move on to the next. The next area that I focus on when grading papers is the development. So the development involves things like sensory details to help the reader feel what the situation was actually like. You can add dialogue. Dialogue makes your writing much more dynamic and lively. The other thing you can do with dialogue is give your reader a better idea of who your characters are. The way people talk and the things that they talk about give us an indication of what their personality is like. So adding dialogue is really a great way to improve your writing in a personal narrative. The details you choose to include in your personal narrative should help develop your message. Don't go off on a tangent. This is actually true also of expository writing when you have a thesis statement. You want to make sure that you don't go off on tangents that distract your reader from your main message. And we'll move on to style next. So style is very important. It is one of the last things I tend to focus on, because once you get the first three down, when you go through your revisions, you should be taking a look at style. Of course, you can pay attention to it beforehand as well while you're writing, but what style means is that you should maintain a consistent tone, and it should be appropriate to your audience and purpose. Your word choice should be accurate. Make sure that you know the definitions of words that you use. If you have any question, check it. Make sure you're using the right word. And it should reflect your audience and purpose. So if you're writing a story for a 6-year-old, you're going to use different vocabulary than you would use for a story for an adult audience. So you can think of this also in terms of if you're writing an email at work compared to writing an email to a friend. How is your vocabulary going to be different? How is your tone going to be different, right? All right. And next we'll move on to spelling and grammar. Last but not least, we have spelling and grammar. Correct spelling and grammar helps readers understand your message. If you have a lot of spelling errors or grammatical errors, it can be difficult for people to understand what you're trying to say. You will notice, well, on the personal narrative, the message comes last, but normally spelling and grammar would be my last category when I'm doing grading. It is important, however, spelling and grammar is not your first consideration when writing, because you could have the best spelling and grammar in the world, but if you don't have a message and you're not supplying details that help the reader understand your message, then your spelling and grammar don't make much difference. So usually we reserve the spelling and grammar for your last revision of your paper, and that's when you're going to go through and make sure that you've crossed all your T's and dotted all your I's. All right, well, that's been your mini lecture on the rubric for today, and you can also see instructions on how to open your rubric to see my feedback that I put directly on the rubric. And there's TK. That's the culprit who interrupted the end of my lecture. Take care. Have a good day. I hope you enjoyed this lecture.